The Emd Sd40-2 is a 3,000 horsepower cc diesel-electric locomotive built by Emd from 1972 to 1989. The Sd40-2 was introduced in January 1972 as part of Emd's -2 series, competing against the GE U30C in the ALCO Century 630. Although higher horsepower locomotives were available, including Emd's own Sd45-2, the reliability and versatility of the 3,000 horsepower Sd40-2 made it the best-selling model in Emd's history and the standard of the industry. For several decades after its introduction, the Sd40-2 was an improvement over the Sd40, with modular electronic control systems similar to those of the experimental DDA40X. Peak production of the Sd40-2 was in the mid-1970s. Sales of the Sd40-2 began to diminish after 1981 due to the oil crisis, increased competition from GE's -7 series and the introduction of the Emd Sd40, which was available concurrently to late Sd40-2 production. The last Sd40-2 delivered to a United States railroad was built in July 1984, with production continuing for railroads in Canada until 1988, Mexico until February 1986, and Brazil until October 1989. As of 2013, nearly all built still remain in service. The Sd40-2 has seen service in Canada, Mexico, Brazil and Guinea. To suit export countries' specifications, General Motors designed the GT26CWSS for Great Britain, the GT26CW2 for Yugoslavia, South Korea, Iran, Morocco, Peru and Pakistan, while the GT26CU2 went to Zimbabwe and Brazil. Various customizations led Algeria to receive the version of Sd40-2 known as GT26HCW2. Sd42S is still quite usable nearly 50 years after the first Sd40 was made. Many Sd40s and locomotives from the pre-2 series have been updated to -2 specifications, possibly including downgrading from 20 to 645E to 16 to 645E engines, including, certainly, -2 electrical controls. Although the pre-2 frames cannot accommodate the somewhat similar HTC truck in the space allocated to the Flexicoil C-truck, most Sd42s which remain in service have by now been rebuilt in kind for another 30 to 40 years of service, although a few have been rebuilt to incorporate a 12-cylinder EFI-equipped 710G engine. Appearance and spotting features. As the Sd38, Sd39, Sd40, and Sd45 shared a common frame, so too did the Sd38-2, Sd40-2, and Sd45-2. It was 3 feet longer than the previous models, giving a length of 68 feet 10 in over the coupler pulling faces. The Sd38-2 and Sd40-2 shared the same basic superstructure, since they used the same 16 to 645 engine. The long hood was 18 inches longer than the Sd38 and Sd40, but since the increase in frame length was even greater, the Sd38-2 and Sd40-2 had even larger front and rear porches than the earlier models. These empty areas at front and rear are spotting features to identify the -2 models of both units. The Sd40-2 can be distinguished from the Sd38-2 by its 3 roof-mounted radiator fans instead of 2, and a single large exhaust stack instead of two smaller stacks. The increase in the frame length between the preceding 40 series and the 40-2 series 6-axle locomotives was made to accommodate the new HTC truck design, in which the traction motors all face the same direction, making the trucks longer. After a series of derailments involving Amtrak SDP40F units that were equipped with hollow bolster, HTC trucks applied only to the SDP40F. Conrail ordered the SD40-2 units and several orders of SD50s with the older Flexicoil trucks, but the HTC truck was vindicated and it ultimately went under most 40 series, 50 series and 60 series 6-axle locomotives, and this truck is still found under many remanufactured locomotives. As of 2008, some SD45 units have been modified by replacing the 20-cylinder engine with the 16-cylinder removed from scrapped SD40-2 units. This was common on Union Pacific and possibly other railroads. In many cases these are identified by the owner as SD40-3, SD40M2 or some such. Confusingly, what appears to be an SD45 is labeled as an SD40-2. Older SD40-2 units used in low-power modes such as yard switching or hump service have been deturbocharged, resulting in the mechanical equivalent of a SD38-2. Units so modified may or may not be relabeled. There are several variations of the SD40-2 such as the SD40T2S bought by the former Southern Pacific and Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroads, now operated by Union Pacific. The SD45 tunnel motor equivalent, the SD45T2 model, was also utilized by Southern Pacific. Many tunnel motors were rebuilt and sold second-hand to a handful of American short lines including Bessemer and Lake Erie, Illinois Railway and Missouri and Northern Arkansas, as well as Canadian short-line Goderich-Exeter Railway. There is the SD42W bought and operated by the Canadian National Railway. High-nosed versions of the SD40-2 were bought by Norfolk and AMP Western and AMP Southern Railway. These units are now operated by the Norfolk Southern Railway. A narrow-gauge version produced for Ferrovia Central Atlantico in Brazil is the BB40-2. There are distinguishable differences between the EMD models and the Canadian GMD-built models. Most notable of the headlight configurations. The biggest giveaway is the rear light. GMD Sd40-2s have a single beam, where EMD has twin beam-styled lights, usually placed next to each other. GMD models also have lights mounted on the nose, and EMD is above the cab between the number boards. Some EMD variations have a nose headlight, although the headlight style and placement usually isn't the same as seen on the GMDs. Other features on the GMD models include the bell mounted above the cab between the numbers, triple-style classification lights above the numbers, and no number boards on the back. 3 cabless SD40-2Bs were also rebuilt from standard SD42s by the Burlington Northern Railroad in the early 1980s. The units had been in collisions and BN decided that it was more economical to rebuild them without cabs. Canadian Pacific also owns a few SD40-2Bs. These were created by welding metal plates over the cab windows of many of its ex-Norfolk Southern and some of its original SD42s. Additional specifications. Photo gallery. Original owners. Variants. SD40-2. A variant of the SD40-2 was created for several Western railroads for extended periods in tunnels and snow sheds. Originally purchased by Southern Pacific and Rio Grande Railroads, these were transferred to the Union Pacific Railroad in 1996. They have since found the way into the used locomotive market, and many have been sold to regional railroads around the U.S. British Rail Class 59. Another variant of the SD40-2 was created for Foster Yeoman, a British quarrying and aggregates company, which features a unique body design specifically for the European railway markets. Designated as Class 59, the initial production batch of 4 locomotives entered service in 1986. Sd40-2W. The Emd Sd40-2 is a Canadian market version of the Sd40-2 diesel-electric locomotive, built for the Canadian National Railway by the Diesel Division of General Motors of Canada Limited, of London, Ontario. 123 were constructed between May 1975 and December 1980. The major difference between the Sd40-2 and a regular Sd40-2 is the fitment of a wide-nose Canadian comfort cab, commonly denoted by adding a W in the model name. Sd42F. The Emd Sd42F is a locomotive operated by Canadian Pacific Railway. It's essentially an Sd40-2 with a full cowl hood. CP was the only buyer, buying 25 units, numbered 9000-9024. Sd42S. The Emd Sd42S was an experimental testbed variant of the Sd40-2. 9 of these locomotives were constructed, 5 in April and May 1978 for Burlington Northerners Emd Order Number 776083, and 4 for Union Pacific in November 1980 as Emd Order Number 80653. These locomotives were fitted with improved engine blocks, larger turbochargers, and 2-speed radiator fans which were expected to improve cooling and reliability. The 4 up units, but not the 5BN locomotives, were fitted with an extended long hood, about 28 inches long, up to take in large radiators. Instead of the standard 7 access doors under the radiators, the units had 8. It has been commonly believed these units were fitted with higher capacity AR-16 alternators, traction motors, possibly increased engine power, and Super Series wheel slip control. However, Don Strack's research in Union Pacific's archives has proven that the up units at least were not so equipped. After a year's testing, UP's locomotives were fitted with standard engines and turbochargers. It is probable that the BN locomotives were also similarly refitted. All BN units are still in service with successor BNSF Railway, while of the UP locomotives 2 remain in service with UP, renumbered to UP 3412 and 3277 from UP 3806 and 3807. Former UP 3805 is now in service with the Iowa, Chicago and Eastern Railroad as ICE 6406, and former UP 3808 now belongs to the Evansville Western Railway as EVWR 6003. The -3 suffix is not part of any official lineup, and is a loose designation for rebuilt -2 series EMDs, not just the CSX rebuilds. One example of an SD40-3 rebuild program is the one conducted by CSX. It started in 2010 and at least 50 units have been rebuilt as of 2012. CSX D4040-4049 are painted in the new CSX railcar logo paint scheme. CSX plans to rebuild 300 locomotives. The plan has been to have the new units serve an additional 30 years and cost far less than brand new locomotives. The new cabs can withstand crashes better, have new heating and air conditioning systems, a new control stand, including visual displays, a modern WABCO braking controller, and modernized starting systems. The engine retained the original 3,000 horsepower rating, with rated tractive power increased to 130,000 pounds from the former 86,000 pounds rating. The Sd40-2 is another loose designation, being used to cover both upgrades of pre-2 units to -2 higher specs and the rating of the more powerful Emd Sd40-5 from 3,600 horsepower to the Sd40's power output of 3,000 horsepower. For various reasons, UP has been rebuilding pre-2 Sd40s and related 6-axle Emd locomotives into the functional equivalent of an Sd40-2. Such a rebuild is expected to provide 30 years additional service at a cost which is far less than a new locomotive or an SD59MX rebuild, as the 645 engine, which is retained, is in most cases exempt from certain emissions requirements. Rebuilds. A number of SD42s have been rebuilt into other models. Some of the most unusual are the meter-gauge BB42s for use in Brazil. Conversely, several other models of Emd locomotive have sometimes been rebuilt to Sd40-2 standards, including the Sd40, Sd45, and Sd45-2. Normally, this consists of electrical upgrades and replacing the 20-cylinder prime mover with a 16-cylinder version, ironically often built for GE Capital in Poland using Emd's manufacturing drawings and specifications. An outgrowth of this may be GE Transportation's second sourcing of Emd repair parts. The unusually troublesome SD50s have also been rebuilt into the equivalent of Sd42s rather than scrapping them. The 645F block and crankshaft are inherently good designs, lowering the rating from 3,500 horsepower at 950 revolutions per minute to 3,000 horsepower at 900 revolutions per minute. Solved the mechanical and electrical reliability issues. Sd22ECO. The Sd22ECO is an Emd Sd40-2 are similar, repowered with an Emd 8710 Eco engine. The resulting locomotive is rated at 2,150 horsepower and meets EPA Tier 2 emissions regulations. Sd30C Eco. The Sd30C Eco is an Emd Sd40-2 repowered with an Emd 12-710 prime mover. The locomotive is rated at 3,000 horsepower and meets EPA Tier 0 emissions regulations. Preservation. In June 2009, Union Pacific had donated 3,028 to the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. The unit still wears its original factory paint from when it was built for the CNW in March 1974. CNW 6847 was patched by UP in February 2003 to UP 3028 and retired in December 2008. The locomotive has since had its UP patches removed and CNW herald and numbers restored. Union Pacific had traded Sd40-2 number 3105 and other equipment to the Rail Giants Museum in Fairplex in Pomona, California for Union Pacific 4884 number 4014 Big Boy, which UP is restoring to operational status. The number number 3105 locomotive was originally built in 1979 as Missouri Pacific number 6027, and one of the few that the Missouri Pacific ordered with dynamic braking.